High above the blood-stained sands of the central proving grounds, the observation deck smelled faintly of ozone and sterilized air. General Kalex stood motionless at the reinforced glass. His command staff formed a rigid semicircle behind him. The only sound in the pressurized room was the rhythmic clicking of Subcommander Vrel's chitinous mandibles, a nervous habit that betrayed his impatience. The Drath Hive combat trials were designed to test swarm integration. A solitary creature was a mathematical anomaly, a dead end in the evolutionary flowchart. Down in the pit, Cadet Morales of the Human Infantry Division stretched her shoulders. She did not look like a warrior. She lacked heavy carapace, natural weaponry, or redundant organs. Directly above her, suspended out of reach at exactly 15 meters, the swarm node hovered. The pulsating, armored sphere served as the localized brain for the drones below. It was perfectly safe. No ground combatant could breach that altitude without jet assist technology, which was strictly forbidden in the arena. Morales reached into her uniform pocket. Kalex's ocular receptors narrowed, anticipating a high-yield detonator or a signal flare. Instead, she pulled out a small, hand-carved wooden figure. It resembled a stylized, four-legged animal from her home world. She walked to the perimeter and set it carefully on a stone outcropping, entirely intact and far from the center grid. She places a totem, Vrel clicked. Superstition, the hallmark of an unevolved mind. If you think you know how a hive consumes a solitary target, pay close attention, because I promise you will want to see exactly what happens next. The trial commenced. 300 soldier drones, a Class 4 swarm, poured from the subterranean gates. They moved as a single fluid organism, a wave of snapping claws and hardened chitin. Morales didn't draw the heavy Thunderchild rifle strapped to her back. She didn't seek high ground. She remained rooted in the center of the sand, her demeanor cheerfully casual. She pulled a small, foil-wrapped cylinder from her utility belt and tore it open with her teeth. Warning! The observation deck's tactical suite chimed in a synthesized voice. Unregistered chemical compound detected. High caloric density. Potential bioexplosive hazard. Kalex leaned forward. His primary manipulators twitched against the console. Magnify the feed. The holographic display enlarged the image. Morales was casually chewing a compressed oat and honey ration bar, while 300 lethal drones closed the distance to 50 meters. The cultural misunderstanding hung heavy in the command room. The tactical AI was analyzing her breakfast snack as a chemical weapon deployment. Engage! Kalex ordered, his tone clinical and detached. The swarm accelerated. Morales swallowed, wiped her mouth with the back of her gloved hand, and finally unholstered her sidearm. Just the standard-issue kinetic pistol. The wave hit, missed. Morales moved. The human frame seemed sluggish on initial visual analysis, but the kinetic reality was deeply unsettling. Her skin contracted against her underlying skeletal frame, a biological mechanism of localized tension and rapid release that the Drath simply lacked. She didn't fight the swarm directly. She slipped through its microgaps. A drone lunged at her torso. She pivoted, her elbow driving into its sensory cluster with brutal efficiency, while her pistol discharged into the thorax of the drone immediately behind it. The swarm node flashed blue 15 meters above, recalculating the variables. The drones shifted instantly from a chaotic frontal assault to a synchronized, multi-directional pincer movement. They flanked her from 6 distinct angles, cutting off all avenues of retreat. Vrel analyzed the incoming telemetry on his datapad. The swarm logic is flawless. Calculations dictate her cardiovascular stamina will expire in exactly 4 seconds. Subcommander, Kalex interrupted, his voice dropping a full octave. Look at the monitors. Morales wasn't slowing down. Her movements grew tighter, more brutally efficient. She was dismantling their formations from the inside out, using the drone's own mass against them. The front ranks were tripping over their own shattered dead. But the sheer volume of the swarm was overwhelming. By the 40th second, the mathematics of the arena began to assert themselves. Her breathing grew visibly ragged on the thermal imaging. A drone's scythe limb scored a glancing strike across her shoulder armor, throwing her off balance. She stumbled backward, retreating toward the arena wall near the outcropping where her wooden totem sat. The drones paused. They reformed their lines into a perfect crescent, waiting for the node's final execution order. Morales slumped slightly against the stone wall. Her pistol clicked empty. Her chest heaved heavily as she let the useless weapon drop to the sand. She didn't reach for the rifle on her back. Her arms hung loose at her sides. "It is finished," Vrel noted, logging the timestamp. "The solitary unit has exhausted its reserves." Kalex watched the human's lowered head, feeling the clinical satisfaction of a proven hypothesis. The trial was over. Vrel's assessment hung in the sterile air of the observation deck. The crescent of Class 4 soldier drones tightened their formation, their scythe limbs scraping against the sand in a terrifying, synchronized rhythm that vibrated through the floor grates. The execution was imminent. Below, Cadet Morales did not close her eyes. She did not cower against the reinforced boundary wall. Her heavy, ragged breathing slowed, transforming instantly from a symptom of exhaustion into a deliberate, rhythmic oxygenation technique. The trembling in her arms ceased entirely. The swarm node initiated the final execution sequence, but Morales exploded into motion. She dropped low, her boots kicking up a thick cloud of dust. Her right hand snapped backward, gripping the heavy, reinforced barrel of the Thunderchild rifle still slung across her spine. She unclipped it with a sharp twist of her wrist. She did not aim the weapon. She did not attempt to disengage the safety or fire a kinetic round. Instead of succumbing to the overwhelming numbers as every predictive model had guaranteed, the human utilized the momentum of her spinning torso to launch the dense alloy block of her rifle upward, transforming a cumbersome firearm into a ballistic missile of terrifying kinetic potential. The massive weapon tore through the air, defying the planet's standard gravitational pull. 15 meters above the arena floor, the swarm node had been constructed to coordinate ground assaults. It possessed no defensive plating to deflect blunt force trauma from below. The heavy rifle smashed directly into the glowing core of the sphere. The arena detonated with a blinding flash of blue energy. Shards of the swarm node rained down like jagged hail, embedding themselves into the sand. The swarm broke, without the localized command node transmitting a continuous stream of instructions. 300 perfectly synchronized killing machines instantly lost their cohesion. The terrifying fluid wave dissolved into localized chaos. Drones crashed into one another at full speed, their hardened carapaces cracking upon impact. Some spun in tight circles, their sensory clusters overloaded by the sudden, absolute silence in their neural pathways. Others simply collapsed into the blood-stained sand, their scythe limbs misfiring violently as they attacked the dirt itself. On the observation deck, the silence was absolute, heavier than the reinforced glass separating them from the slaughter. Kalex stared down at the pit. His primary hands moved numbly over the main control console, his digits adjusting a magnification setting that absolutely did not need adjusting. His mandibles were locked wide open. The chitin around his neck plates cracked slightly under the sudden, involuntary expansion of his secondary respiratory sacs. "What was that trajectory?" he demanded, his clinical tone fracturing into something hollow. "She possessed no propulsion gear. Calculate the kinetic force required to bridge that vertical gap." Subcommander Vrel was frantically parsing the bioscans, his previous arrogance entirely erased. His claws slipped across the glowing display interface. "General Kalex," he stammered, pointing a trembling appendage at the diagnostic readouts. "Look at her joint articulation and the muscular density of her back." "Commander, their evolutionary history. Humans are one of the very few species in the known galaxy whose entire upper body biomechanics evolved specifically to throw objects with lethal accuracy at extreme velocities. They are apex pursuit predators." Down in the sand, the chaotic thrashing of the drones began to subside into undirected twitching. Morales stood completely still amidst the carnage. She casually reached down, retrieved her discarded kinetic pistol from the dirt, and slammed a fresh magazine into the grip with a sharp, metallic snap that carried through the external audio feeds. She tilted her head backward, looking directly up through the thick viewing pane of the observation deck. Her chest rose and fell in a calm, measured rhythm. She raised 2 dirt-stained fingers to her throat microphone. "Begin." The single word echoed across the command channel. It carried no exhaustion, no fear, and no desperation. Kalex felt a cold, unfamiliar dread pool deep in his thorax. Her earlier struggles, her clumsy retreats, the ragged breathing, none of it was real. The tactical retreats and missed shots had been deliberate limiters. The human had simply been testing her own localized gravity adjustments. She had been stretching. The decimation of a Class 4 swarm was a physical warm-up. "Seal the primary bulkheads," Kalex ordered softly, stepping back from the glass. "Lock the central proving grounds down entirely." He finally understood the terrible truth of the human military infrastructure. Individualism was not a mathematical weakness. It was a concentrated, unpredictable threat. A hive mind could be decapitated with a single strike, leaving thousands helpless, but a human had to be killed piece by piece, and they would weaponize their own environment to stop you. Down in the pit, the faint smell of ozone drifted from the deactivating energy barriers. The arena floor was a graveyard of shattered chitin, yet the small wooden totem sat entirely intact on its stone outcropping. Whether the human had placed it there as a primitive comfort, a calculated boundary marker, or a quiet promise of surviving the slaughter, Kalex would never truly know.